The world of boxing had seen its fair share of rivalries, but few carried the raw electricity of this one. It wasn't just a fight. It was a collision of two forces destined to meet under the blinding lights. On one side stood Ryan Garcia, a fighter with blistering speed, a social media following that dwarfed most of his peers, and a left hook that could end a night in an instant. On the other, Gervonta "Tank" Davis, a powerhouse with knockout power that sent opponents crashing into oblivion. A man who carried himself with the quiet confidence of someone who knew exactly what he was capable of. This wasn't just a clash of styles. It was a battle for supremacy, a war between the fast and the furious, the sharpshooter and the wrecking ball. Months of anticipation had led to this moment. The buildup had been relentless, fueled by call-outs, interviews, and the unmistakable tension that crackled between them whenever they shared the same space. Some called it a mismatch. Either Ryan's speed would be too much, or Tank's power would be the deciding factor. But those who knew the sport understood this wasn't a simple equation of speed versus strength. This was about timing, intelligence, heart, and the ability to take everything the other man had and still stand tall. From the moment the fight was announced, the boxing world split into two camps. There were those who believed Ryan's reach and agility would make him untouchable, that his discipline and dedication to sharpening his craft would finally silence the doubters. Others dismissed him as hype, convinced that when Tank's fists found their target, the fight would be over before Ryan had a chance to react. The debates were endless, the tension unbearable, and the night of the fight couldn't come soon enough. Fight night was something else entirely. The energy inside the arena was suffocating, not with heat but with the weight of expectation. Celebrities, legends of the sport, and die-hard fans all gathered, their voices rising in anticipation. The ring, bathed in bright lights, looked like a stage set for something more than just a contest of skill. It was a proving ground, a place where legacies would be defined in the span of a few rounds. Ryan walked out first, his face a mask of focus, his usual charm tucked away beneath the reality of the moment. He had worked for this, dreamed of this, and now there was no turning back. His footsteps were deliberate, each one carrying the weight of a lifetime of training. He had spent months fine-tuning his reflexes, sharpening his strategy, preparing for the moment when he would finally stand across from the man who many believed was too much for him. Then came Tank. His entrance was different. There was no rush in his movements, no nervous energy. He was a man who had been here before, who had walked this path and left a trail of fallen opponents in his wake. His record was a testament to what he was capable of, and if Ryan was hoping for hesitation, he wouldn't find it here. The ring had seen Tank before, and it had never seen him leave without making a statement. The moment they stood face to face, the noise of the arena faded. It was just the two of them now. No cameras, no analysts breaking down footwork or predicting outcomes. Just two fighters, locked in a moment that had been years in the making. There was no fear in Ryan's eyes, no doubt in Tank's. What happened next would determine who walked away a champion and who walked away wondering what went wrong. The referee gave his final instructions, and for a second, everything stood still. Then came the opening bell. The bell rang, and neither man hesitated. Ryan took the center of the ring first, his footwork light, his hands moving in that familiar rhythm feint, jab, reset. He wasn't going to let Tank dictate the pace. But Tank didn't rush in either. He stood just outside of range, studying, reading, waiting for the moment when a gap would present itself. Every twitch of Ryan's shoulders, every shift of his weight, Tank saw it all. The tension between them was more than just competition. It was a silent conversation, one told through movement and instinct. Then Ryan struck. A crisp jab snapped out, touching Tank's guard, quick and sharp. Another followed, this time slipping through. It wasn't about power. It was about setting a rhythm, forcing Tank into a game where speed ruled. The crowd responded, roaring with approval as Ryan's hands fired off in rapid combinations, keeping Tank from settling in. But Tank had seen fast fighters before. He knew speed alone wasn't enough. And he knew Ryan had never faced someone who could take a punch and keep walking forward. Tank inched closer, bobbing his head, slipping just out of reach. He wasn't chasing Ryan, he was stalking him. The difference was subtle, but it was there. Ryan, sensing the pressure, fired his signature left hook. It was quick, devastating if it landed. But Tank saw it coming. He rolled under it, stepping in at the same time. In an instant, Ryan's space was gone. A short left hand, compact and brutal, slammed into Ryan's ribs. The sound of it was unmistakable, a dull thud that echoed through the ring. Ryan's face tensed, his body reacting before his mind had time to register. He moved back, trying to reset, but Tank was already there. Another body shot. Then another. The crowd felt the shift before the commentators could put it into words. This wasn't just a fight for positioning anymore. This was Tank breaking Ryan down piece by piece. Ryan adjusted, moving laterally, refusing to be a stationary target. His jab became more urgent, less about scoring points and more about keeping Tank at bay. But Tank was relentless. He wasn't throwing in volume, but every shot he let go had a purpose. Ryan needed something to disrupt the rhythm, to keep Tank from walking him down. Then, out of nowhere, he found it. A right uppercut one Tank never saw coming, landed clean on his chin. For the first time, his legs wobbled. It wasn't enough to drop him, but it was enough to make him take a step back. Ryan pounced. He unloaded a combination, the speed blinding, his fists a blur. The arena erupted as Tank was forced against the ropes, covering up. But just when it looked like Ryan had turned the tide, he overcommitted. He reached too far with a left hook, leaving himself open for just a second. And a second was all Tank needed. A counter left hand exploded into Ryan's jaw, his head snapping back violently. His legs buckled, and suddenly, the fight was hanging in the balance. Both men were hurt now. Both had felt the power of the other. And the next few moments would determine who survived. Ryan's vision blurred for a split second, but he had no time to process what had just happened. His legs wobbled beneath him, his body fighting to stay upright as Tank took a measured step forward. The crowd, once a deafening roar, seemed to fade into the background. In that moment, nothing else existed but the two of them, two warriors locked in a battle that neither could afford to lose. Tank smelled blood. His instincts took over, honed by years of breaking men down and finishing them when the moment was right. He feinted low, drawing Ryan's hands down just enough, then unleashed a brutal right hook aimed for the knockout. But Ryan, running on pure reflex, managed to slip just enough to take the impact off center. It still rocked him, but it didn't end him. He clenched, wrapping his arms around Tank in a desperate attempt to buy seconds of recovery. The referee stepped in, separating them, and Ryan exhaled sharply, resetting his stance. His mind raced. He had hurt Tank once before he could do it again. But now he knew he had to be perfect. One mistake, one moment of overconfidence, and it would be over. Tank came forward again, patient, methodical. He cut off the ring, forcing Ryan into a corner, his movement precise. A left hand to the body sank into Ryan's ribs, forcing a grunt out of him. Then another. It was punishment in its purest form, calculated destruction meant to break a fighter's will before breaking their body. Ryan winced, but refused to fold. Then something changed. Maybe it was instinct, maybe it was the years of training kicking in, but Ryan saw an opening small, but there. Tank had been so focused on breaking him down that for the briefest second, his guard dropped just a little too low. Ryan took the risk. A lightning-fast left hook exploded from his corner, landing flush against Tank's temple. The force of it sent shockwaves through the arena. Tank stumbled, his balance shifting, his legs betraying him for the first time. The undefeated wrecking machine was hurt badly. The crowd erupted as Ryan pounced, his hands moving in a blur, every ounce of power he had left pouring into each shot. A right hand found its mark. Another left. Tank tried to hold on, but Ryan wouldn't let him. He dug deep, pressing forward, throwing everything he had into one final attack. And then it happened. A crushing right hand sent Tank's mouthpiece flying, his body stiffening before collapsing to the canvas. The referee rushed in, beginning the count, the entire arena holding its breath. Tank, the man who had walked through countless fighters, was now staring up at the lights, dazed, struggling to rise. The count reached 8. Tank pushed himself up to one knee, shaking his head, trying to clear the fog. 9. He looked at the referee, eyes unfocused. 10. It was over. Ryan Garcia had done the impossible. He had just handed Gervonta "Tank" Davis his first professional loss. The stadium erupted, fans in disbelief, some celebrating, others stunned into silence. Ryan, his body battered and bruised, fell to his knees, the realization washing over him. He had been counted out by many before the fight even started. But now, in front of the world, he had proven that speed, precision, and heart could overcome even the most dangerous of opponents. As Tank sat in his corner, hands resting on his knees, he looked over at Ryan, not with anger, but with something else. A nod, almost imperceptible, a silent acknowledgement between two warriors who had given everything. This wasn't just a fight. It was a moment that would be remembered forever.